Living in stress is living in survival. And survival is a very primitive mechanism that allows us to really adapt to an environment that's threatening or dangerous. The moment you perceive a danger or threat, you switch on an autonomic function in your body, the sympathetic nervous system, and there's an arousal. And the arousal of those hormones causes a heightening of the senses, because now we want to become more acute, that there's a danger there. If there's a tiger in the bushes and you hear something rumbling around and it's night, you're going to either run, fight, or freeze, or hide. That's your choices. And so that works really well in survival for the short term, because the arousal causes us feeling like we're more our body. We get a rush of energy. The arousal causes our brain waves to change and to move into a more alert state. We narrow our focus on what it is in the environment. We're giving it our attention, all of our attention. And now we're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future based on what we've known in the past. So we're overlaying a known into the future so that we can prepare. And normally when we don't know what it is, the unknown causes us to feel these primitive emotions of survival, and it's best to run. It's best to fear the unknown. So the challenge becomes that works really well for the short term. But when you switch on this system and you're mobilizing enormous amounts of the body's energy and resources for some threat in your outer world, there's no energy in your inner world for growth and repair. There's no energy for long-term building projects. And we start tapping the body's vital resources, and that's what creates mental health or physical health or spiritual disease, right? So because no organism can live in that emergency state for that extended period of time. It's like there's a hurricane coming through Australia, you're not going to be thinking about remodeling your kitchen at that time. It's not a time for long-term projects, right? So now when we're in stress and we're in survival, the self is the most important. You don't trust, it's not a time to love, it's not a time to learn, it's not a time to communicate. It's not a time to be vulnerable. It's not a time to open your heart. It's not the time to sit down and close your eyes and go within. You would be eaten. The survival gene is switched on, and people spend 70% of their time living in this state. So then in that state where the arousal takes place, the brain moves into a heightened brainwave pattern called beta brainwave pattern. Now, as I said, that's like driving your sports car in first gear on the freeway. It's the jump start. But you can't do it for a long period of time, because in stress is signaled by the loss of control, not being able to predict the next moment, the unknown, or the perception that something's going to get worse. And when you're in that state, you start trying to control and predict everything in your life, and you shift your attention from one person to another problem, to another thing, to another place, to another object, to a group of situations. And every one of those elements has a neurological network in the brain. So the arousal causes the brain, like a lightning storm in the clouds, to start firing out of order. It starts firing incoherently. And when the brain is incoherent, we're incoherent. When the brain isn't working right, we're not working right. So then now the person is aroused in that state. It's never occurred to them that they could change that. In fact, they're telling you, I am this way because of my boss, because of my ex, because of my past, because of the news, because of the global situation, whatever it is. And what they're really saying is, I'm using something in my outer environment to validate or justify why I feel this way. So then that means then they're also going to be dependent on something in their outer environment to make them feel better. Whether it's a drug or a treatment or whatever it is, complaining, whatever it is that makes them feel better. And the moment they notice that they've done something and they've used something outside of them to make that feeling go away, they'll pay attention to what it was, and every time they feel that feeling, they'll become dependent on it. So now they're more dependent on their environment. So then the subconscious program is, when things are good, you feel good. But when things are bad, you feel bad. So you're completely victim to your environment, and the environment is actually controlling the way you feel and think. Now, anything that controls the way you feel and think, you're victim too. So I say, Glenn, why are you in such a bad mood? I'm in a bad mood because of this person, this circumstance, this situation in my life. What you're really saying is, something in my outer environment is literally controlling my feelings, my emotions, and my thoughts. So then it turns out that when the person is in that state and they're in that aroused state, their heart is beating because the sympathetic nervous system switched on, but they're not running. They're not fighting, they're not hiding, they're stepping on the gas pedal and they're stepping on the brake. And the heart starts beating very incoherently. And incoherent waves in the brain and incoherent waves in the heart diminish energy. So energy goes out of the brain, energy goes out of the heart, we stop thinking clearly, we stop rationalizing very well, we can't plan for the future. We're uninspired. In our heart, we don't trust, we can't feel gratitude, we can't feel appreciation, we can't feel love. It's not a time to feel any of those things. So then that's the beginning of disease, right? So the person starts thinking about their problems and they turn on that stress response just by thought alone. And if the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease, then your thoughts are going to make you sick. And the question is, if your thoughts can make you sick, is it possible that your thoughts can make you well? And by the same means, if you're using every person, every circumstance in your life to reaffirm that dependency on that rush of emotions, then you become addicted to the life you don't even like. That's why change is so hard, because you'd rather suffer and be in pain than take a chance in the unknown, because the unknown, you can't predict it. So people cling to the familiar and cling to the known, and so they become dependent on the environment. So what we found out was, is there a way to make the brain more coherent? Is there a formula that we can teach people? Instead of narrowing their focus on the material world, narrowing their focus on everything known, what if they broaden their focus and they put it on nothing, on space? If they broaden their focus and they open their awareness in this way, what happens to the brain? And we found the brain gets really organized. What if they traded fear for an elevated emotion, and we taught them how to start working with their body? Now here's the answer to your question. You practice that long enough, you close your eyes, you're not distracted by your environment, you're sitting down, you're not eating, you're not talking, you're not watching TV, you're not on your cell phone, you're not smelling, you're not tasting, you're not feeling with your body, you're sitting still, you're not thinking about your schedule or what you got to do or what happened yesterday, and you're working with the body and you're understanding the process. You keep settling the body down when it's aroused. You keep watching your body wanting to get up and do something, you keep bringing it back, and you're training your body to a new mind. It turns out if you keep practicing this, the body finally surrenders to a new mind, and there's a liberation of energy, and the person releases a little of that anger, they release a little bit of that fear, and the body can relax more into the present moment, and energy moves into the heart. We've measured this so many times. Once energy makes it to the heart informs the brain. It's safe to create. It's safe to think about a possibility of how to get out of this situation.